Being a financial advisor is the third coolest job in the world, and it isn't actually all that difficult of a field to get into. However, there are some important requirements that you're going to want to hit. It can make a pretty big difference. The university or college classes that you take, if you're planning to become an advisor, it will make a significant difference. And then the internships that you get in the industry during or shortly after college, I think will have a big impact on what area of the wealth management field you end up landing in. And then there are plenty of certifications that you can do after college, and once you've started the job. A couple of them will be requirements, and then several others will be totally optional, but pretty important depending on how you want to position yourself in the field and how much success you ultimately want to have. And then there are things like what firms, and then there are things like what avenues in the industry you should take, which is probably the next most important thing about becoming a financial advisor and setting yourself up for a successful career. So although it's a relatively low barrier of entry, there are all these other elements that need to be discussed. So let's get into it. If you're new to the channel, hi, my name is AJ. I'm a CFP professional financial advisor. I've been in the industry for about 9 years. I'm a CFA charter holder as well, and I talk about both of those programs on this YouTube channel. But for today, I want to hit on a couple of the biggest points as I see them when it comes to actually becoming a financial advisor and getting started in the industry. We're gonna start off with some of the college or university classes. Now, I realize some of you watching this video may already be in an early, mid, or even a late stage within your career in another field and you're considering switching over into finance. That's fine, we will get into those topics later on here. But first, speaking to those who are thinking about their career, 5 years down the road, maybe still in high school, how do you want to position your college or university studies? Obviously, taking a finance-related program is going to be beneficial. There are tons of different general business and general finance programs or economics programs out there at colleges and universities nationwide. And to be honest, all of them will be at least sufficient towards getting you the right start that you need to get into the industry. But there are a couple of specific avenues that may have relative benefits to you to pursue. First and foremost is that if you want to be a financial planner like I am and work directly with retail clients, meaning regular people, then you're likely going to want the CFP designation, Certified Financial Planner designation, later on in your career. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but there's an important step you may want to take when you're choosing a college or university in relation to that. One of the major requirements that the CFP board has, and you can read all about this online or watch whole videos about this requirement, is that in order to take the CFP exam someday, you need to satisfy the CFP's educational requirements. And the CFP board has designated certain colleges and universities that have specific financial advising or financial planning majors within their business schools that say to where the coursework you take while in college at one of these designated colleges or universities will count towards the CFP board's educational requirements. Meaning, once you graduate with a degree from one of those colleges, you get to forego like 12 to 24 months of other education that people who didn't go to a credentialed college or university will have to do in their post-college graduate years. So if you really want to become a financial planner and you think you're going to do the CFP, you should really consider one of these colleges that the CFP board says, yeah, their coursework counts towards our designation. At the university I attended, the finance program did not count towards the CFP board's educational requirements. There is a separate university in the city that I now live in where they have a personal financial planning major at the business school, and those classes do count towards the CFP board's educational requirements. And kids that have graduated from that college have a much easier road to being able to sit for the CFP exam to ultimately try to become a CFP professional compared to what I did and compared to what other people who didn't knock out those requirements in college did. So again, you can give yourself a huge timing advantage within the financial planning industry if you go to one of those colleges that count towards the educational credits for the CFP. Okay, next, and this is going to apply to just about anyone considering the wealth management industry, even if you want to do trust administration or just like run an SMA where you're picking stocks or something like that, is I think accounting classes are actually, believe it or not, because I know accounting has the reputation for being the most boring subject in college or university, accounting classes are probably the most beneficial classes you can take. Now, part of the reason I say that is because they're the only classes that are permanently relevant, at least in my opinion, because a lot of these economics classes or financial modeling classes or equity valuation classes, the way that those practices are done in the industry often change, and sometimes the professors in those fields, can put more of their own opinion into how that type of work needs to be done. Compare that to accounting. Accounting has very strict and set standards, which while they do change, they're always closely related to how the prior version of those standards worked, and they're just adjusting certain features. And so accounting classes are just always going to be relevant. Plus, as a financial advisor, a financial planner, I can tell you that you will spend far more time dealing with taxes, tax reporting, and tax planning than you might expect. It is a significant part of the job as a financial advisor. So any information that you can gather through accounting classes, especially if they're around personal tax returns rather than corporate taxes or corporate auditing, personal tax planning is going to be super relevant for this career. So accounting classes are great in college, and if you do one of those classes that I talked about earlier that counts towards the CFP educational requirements, you're gonna have plenty of accounting classes during your coursework. Okay, our next topic is to review what types of internships you should be considering, and maybe more importantly, looking for and applying to once you're in college or shortly after college if you're not able to find full-time positions. This was critical for me because I interned in 3 different areas of the wealth management industry after each of my 3 years of college, after my freshman year, sophomore year, and junior year, and I didn't really love any of those 3. After my sophomore year, I did sort of a trading, futures and forwards markets trading internship. After my junior year, I did more of an equity analysis and stock picking type shop internship with an RIA that I worked at. And although at the time I thought those were the types of jobs that I was gonna want for my life, those are the things I thought I was most interested in, I found them both to be boring. And maybe it was partly the offices I worked at. Now, they were both perfectly great places to be, but they just weren't exactly what resonated best with my personality. And just the actual work I was doing was a little less fun than what I later learned, like watching Susie Orman on CNBC, can I afford it type things. I wanted to be having those types of conversations with retail clients, regular people. And so personal financial planning is ultimately where I decided I wanted to be. But importantly, it took a few internships in other areas to go, no, I don't really like this type of work all that much. Now, getting internships in multiple different subsectors within the field you're looking at can be tricky. I have full videos on that topic also on this channel, so check those out. But again, getting as much exposure within the industry, sort of shopping around within different subsectors of the industry can be extremely beneficial in helping you learn what type of work you actually enjoy doing the most, and that is critical for setting yourself up for a successful career. Bonus points about internships. When you hear about the intern program from Northwestern Mutual, which you certainly will hear about if you're looking for internships in the financial advising space, or from Morgan Stanley, that one is relatively similar, just know that those are cold call sales first internships, and they're not bad at building experience in talking to people and learning how to sell things, but they're probably not what they sound like they are when the recruiters talk to you about those jobs. And they're notorious for basically churning out 95% of the people that take those jobs, and they only keep the top 5% of performers in terms of sales quotas. So those are not always ideal for most people looking to get into the financial planning world. It's much better, in my opinion, if you can find something focused on like customer service or supporting an existing team rather than cold calling all day long and trying to generate new leads for a big company. Next, let's talk about some of the required licensing that you'll have, because no matter what areas of the wealth management industry you work in, if you are client facing and you're dealing with securities, stocks or bonds, then you're gonna need some, in the United States, some of the FINRA licenses. The basic ones would be like the Series 6 and Series 7. I shouldn't say basic. The primary ones to talk about first would be the Series 6 or mainly the Series 7 actually. Keep in mind, you first need to do the SIE, which is the Securities Essentials exam or something like that. Keep in mind, you'll first need to do the SIE exam, which is the Securities Industry Essentials exam, I believe. Once you finish the SIE, then you can go for the 6 or 7. But you will have to get some of these licenses done. Then depending on what type of firm you work at, like the RIA that I internshipped at in college, those advisors only had the Series 65 license. The job that I ended up doing required I have the Series 66. Sometimes you might go with the Series 63, depending on what the company that you are interning or working for asks you to get. So it doesn't hurt to read about these different licensing exams and figure out what goes into them. None of them are all that difficult. You can knock them out with a couple or a few months of study after college, but they are relevant for getting into the industry. And a big point about the SIE is that if you're having trouble landing a role, then you should do the SIE first, because you don't need to be sponsored by an existing firm in the industry to take the SIE. You can just study for it on your own, pay the exam fee, sign up for the exam, take it, and pass it. And then once you have the SIE, that's a little bit of a ticket. It's a little bit of a rite of passage, so that when you are calling and emailing and applying for positions in the field that you want to be in, you can say, hey, I've completed the SIE, I just need a firm to sponsor me to take the Series 7, for example. Those other exams, you do need to be already working for a firm that will sponsor you to sit for them. But the SIE is your foot in the door in that sense. Again, there's not a huge difference between all those exams. I mean, there's a difference in terms of the coursework of those exams, but they're just sort of like, they're required licenses, like a driver's license. You're gonna need it to be on the road. So your firm will tell you which ones they want you to get. Just keep in mind that is gonna be a requirement, but it's certainly not like board exams for people in the medical field. Our licensing exams in financial planning are a lot easier than those and a lot quicker to handle. The next topic is going to be around which credentials you decide to get after your name. Let me first say, I don't think any of the credentials are required for any type of work in the finance field. Let me first say that mostly these credentials are not requirements for most types of work in the finance field. You can have a long, successful career never getting any little letters after your name, no extra credentials. But clients sort of look for them, and hiring managers within the field do care about them. So it says a lot if someone has the CFP and they're a financial advisor and you're looking to get a job or you're switching firms or whatever. And it also says a little bit to clients. Some clients care about those things. Most don't, but some do. But importantly, 2 or 3 of those credentials can take a pretty long time to get. We're talking sometimes 2 to 3 to 4 years. Now we're well into your 20s after college or university and you're still sort of studying for things. It can be a big commitment if you want to get several of those credentials after your name. The big one in personal financial planning is the CFP. And if you're getting started in the industry as a financial advisor, I would recommend that you do it. But if you didn't go to a college where the education credits counted towards the educational requirements, like I mentioned, then you're gonna have to start new online classes, sort of like you're in college again, for at least another year, maybe 2 years, before you're even allowed to sit for the CFP exam. That's a big deal. It's a big commitment. And in some senses, especially if you choose to do multiple credentials, and in one sense, if you choose to do that, and especially multiple credentials within this field, there can be as much schooling as like becoming a doctor. And that's just the reality of it. Personally, I definitely would not prioritize getting a lot of credentials after your name, especially not prioritize those things over actually conducting business and getting experience working with clients and bringing in new dollars to manage as a financial advisor and growing your career. Those things are, in my view, more fun, more important than getting a whole bunch of letters after your name. But some people are sort of lifetime academics and they just want to knock off 6 different fields of education in the financial advising space, so they do a ton of different designations, to each their own. My recommendation would be to do the CFP and then pause from there. And maybe there are a couple of others that probably won't take as long as the CFP, but could be relevant to the specific type of work in financial planning, that could be relevant to the specific type of financial planning that you want to do with clients in your life. And so maybe go for those. But the CFP is a big one. It's a good starting point, and it's a pretty significant difference maker. It's one to consider for sure. The last topic for this video is going to be what type of a firm you should work at in your career as a financial advisor. And this is probably where the biggest difference is going to come, more so than what college you went to or what credentials you choose. The firm that you work at, the type of business model that it is, and also sometimes just the culture of the specific firm that you work at will have a huge impact on how your career looks, literally like your day-to-day responsibilities and quality of life, and also what the progression of your career is going to look like. If you work in the wealth management division for a bulge bracket bank like JP Morgan or Merrill Lynch or Goldman Sachs or something like that, those are typically like the biggest financial planning offices. Those financial advisors are the ones with the biggest amount of assets under management nationally and those types of things, because these banks facilitate large transactions, whether they're leveraged buyouts, IPOs, M&As, whatever, for pretty big companies. And then oftentimes the recipients of huge windfalls of cash after those large corporate transactions, the individuals will choose to invest their money with financial advisors at some of these bulge bracket banks. So then they refer the clients to the wealth management division and so on and so forth. So those three firms specifically that I mentioned, sometimes called wirehouses, can be considered like the most white collar or the highest tier level of wealth management. But there are some questionable practices that have come up in that space, specifically big banks trying to sell shares of IPOs that they're running to the clients working with that bank's financial advisors, and there's been huge compliance issues because of that. I'm not saying that type of thing is happening all the time, but just look into some of the reputations that these bulge bracket offices can have. Some of them may be great to work at, others maybe not so much. You'd have more of a big city type feel. I think a lot of these are like a Wall Street type feel, and the culture would be less of a small town type culture. And there's also going to be a similar feel to the types of clientele that you're working with, and you just want to consider that when you're thinking about what types of firm. So just consider that when you think about what firm you might want to look at. Personally, I really like the idea of independent broker-dealers, which would be like Raymond James, or I believe Oppenheimer, or Ameriprise. Those are firms where you have a good brand name, you have a lot of support from the corporate level, but you have a fair amount of autonomy to run your financial advising practice as you wish. You can differentiate yourself from the competition. You can offer clients or service clients in ways that you deem best. And so it's sort of a good middle ground in some of those ways. Then there are independent RIAs that operate totally on their own. It could be a team of literally one person, or it could be a large group of 100 people or more running an RIA on their own. They have very little connection with their broker-dealer, which is basically in that scenario, it's just a corporation that you are sending trades to the stock exchange through, and there's no like corporate resources or corporate oversight in how you run your practice at all. If you're new to the industry, all these things I'm saying right now may not make a lot of sense. You're probably gonna have to read into these a little bit more. My recommendation, or at least what fits with my own personality, is somewhere in that middle category, but you'll need to decide on your own. Like I said, there are pretty big differences in the type of work you do and what the cultures look like, depending on what type of firm you end up working at. Lastly, I should mention you can start off completely on your own as a financial advisor in this industry. Well, not start off right away because you need a firm to sponsor you for that Series 7, but when you start building your business, you can be totally on your own. That's a much riskier path, but it can be a much more rewarding and lucrative path. And I would just refer you to other YouTube channels who talk about how to build your own practice as a financial advisor rather than joining an existing team. And then the specific role that you look for at some of these firms, I think will make a really big difference in your development during the early years of your career. If you can look for something like a paraplanner job or a client service job, I know those sound like very different things, but there's going to be a lot of overlap in responsibilities, to be honest with you. Those are the types of roles where you can get exposure to a lot of different functions within a financial advising business and get to start practicing some of those things slowly and slowly and slowly, building on the responsibilities that you have in the early stages of your career. You're not just going to be thrown headfirst into the wolves, so to speak, and you're really going to be given the opportunity to learn in most scenarios in a client service or a paraplanner type role. But if you're a sales first sort of, however, if you're a sales focused shark type person, you might want to just be like trying to find new business every day. And if that's you, then you should look at one of those banks where you might start a cold calling program where you're just trying to bring in clients every single day and you're not really doing much of the financial planning work compared to what you would be doing if you were supporting an existing team and their clients. Some people like to go that route. Again, it's like starting on your own. It is more risky. You might lose your job completely if you don't bring in X number of clients or X number of dollars over, let's say a 12 or 24 month period. Literally, some jobs are structured that way, and it's do or die. It's do or die. But it can work out really, really well if you're one of the top performers in that space. Okay, well, this is a big topic, and even as I've been talking, I'm thinking about other things I'd like to say. I'll cut it off here. Please send me questions, drop comments down below, or send me an email. My email address is in my channel description. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that you might have. And as always, thanks for watching.